Hello, in this video let us see what is an experimental research and various ways of controlling extraneous variables. An experimental design is the process of carrying out research in an objective and controlled fashion so that the precision is maximized and specific conclusions can be drawn on a hypothesis. In order to reach a conclusion or in order to prove or disprove a hypothesis, we are doing a systematic method that is called experimental research or experimental design. There are different variables in an experimental design. Experimentation helps in establishing causal relationship among different events in educational situation under controlled condition. Suppose a researcher wants to study the effect of discussion method on the achievement of students. Here, change in achievement is depend on the discussion method. Hence, the achievement of student is the dependent variable and discussion method is the independent variable. Independent variable is otherwise called experimental variable and or treatment variable. There are few other names for independent variable which are the experimental variable and treatment variable. Which variable we are observing or on which variable we are checking the change, that is known as dependent variable. Here we are checking or testing the achievement of the students. So achievement is the dependent variable, and which is the independent variable here? Discussion method is the independent variable because discussion has an effect on the achievement of the students. In this experiment, the researcher cannot measure the achievement of the students directly. Researcher can only estimate it through scores on the test or marks of the assignments and project, etc. Here the researcher is observing the dependent variable. So the observation is an important process in the experimental research. Now, if you look at this experiment, we cannot say that there are only two variables. One is discussion method and one is achievement of the students. There are other teaching method also taking place in the class. The atmosphere, the environment of the classroom, the intelligence of the students, and the socio-economic status of the students. So many other factors also affect the achievements of the students. For example, the motivation level of the students. Maybe they are getting good motivation from their parents and teachers. All these are affecting the achievement of the students. All these factors we can say as extraneous variables or intervening variables. So there are many variables, but whichever variables we are concentrating or we are finding out the relationship or cause and effect relationship, that variables are dependent and independent variable. But all other variables in the environment of an experiment is called extraneous variable or intervening variable. All these variables also cause the effect of achievement. So all other variables also has an effect on the dependent variable. But in this particular experiment, we have to find out only the effect of discussion method. No matter how objectively and carefully a researcher attempts to control the extraneous variable, still some discrepancy invariably remains and influences the result of the experiment. The researcher can take care of such discrepancies through replication of the studies. The studies he is doing repeatedly, that is called replication of the studies. That is, same experiment has to be repeated several times at different places under similar condition. The finding of the experiment conducted at different places under similar conditions are verified. If there is a consistency in the finding, the generalization are drawn. In different condition, the researcher get the same result, then we can do the generalization. So replication is also another process in the case of experimental research. Four essential characteristics of experimental research are control. We are keeping control, and then we are doing the manipulation of the independent variable, and we are observing the dependent variable, and we are repeating the experiment, that is replication. All these four terms are very much involved in the process of experimental research. First one, control in an experiment. Here the experimenter or the researcher is controlling the source of error that affect the dependent variable. In order to ascertain the effect of an independent variable on the dependent variable, it is necessary to check the influence of this extraneous variable. All other variables we should check in such a way that we can measure the effect of independent variable on the dependent variable. Suppose a researcher want to put a check on intelligence and gender in an experiment, he can form and select the groups in such a way that each groups get the equal number of males and female students. Similarly, he can have students in each group with matching intelligence, same matching IQ, that type of subjects he can select. And at the same time, if there is a chance of affecting the gender on the experiment, he can only select one gender, maybe male only in his as a subject, or only female as a subject, like that. Or otherwise, the number of males is equal to the number of females he can do. That way he can do control in an experiment. Now let us see different methods of control. Random assignment subject to groups. Researcher want to compare auto instruction method with the conventional method of teaching mathematics of 10th grade of students. He take a school where 2 sections of 10th standard is available. These groups may have initial differences with respect to intelligence, interest, motivation, etc. There are section A and B, but there is a chance for difference in intelligence and interest, motivation in different students in different sections. Here the researcher should randomly assign subject assignment in such a way that every student of the population has an equal probability of being chosen for that assignment. Here researcher is using different assignment, but he is giving this assignment randomly to the subjects. Whichever there, if there are 60 subjects, the first assignment may get any one subject, any one student from out of these 60 students. That is known as randomization of the subject, or randomization of the assignment randomly giving to the subjects. Here the researcher should randomly assign subject assignment in such a way that every student of the population has an equal opportunity for being chosen for that assignment. Since in random procedures every member of the population has an equal chance of being selected. Here which way he is doing the randomization? He randomly select the assignment and he is giving that randomly selected assignment to a random subject. Both ways he is randomizing. Then matching subject with random assignment. Here the subject has few matching extraneous variables like same intelligence, same socioeconomic status, sex, age, etc. Researcher can give the assignment randomly to this matching subject. Otherwise he can do one thing, he can select the matching subject, the subject they have equal amount of intelligence, same socio-economic background, and then he can give the assignment randomly. That is also another method of randomization. Next method is holding intervening variable constant. Here throughout the experiment the researcher is keeping the extraneous or intervening variable as a constant. For example, researcher is confident that the gender is a variable that affects the dependent variable. Then what he can do, he can keep the gender same. Maybe he can select only males or otherwise only females for his study. This way researcher would be able to control the effect of gender as an extraneous variable. Similarly, if socio-economic status is likely to be the variable that may affect the dependent variable, then researcher can select the subject from the similar socio-economic status. This way he can holding the extraneous variable constant. Then method of using subject as their own control. Here the same subject we are giving two experimental treatment. There are maybe like we are giving the assignments, maybe 2 assignments we are giving to the same subject. That way same experimental treatment we are giving to the same subject. Then the researcher do the measurement. Which way? Measurement of the subject after completing first treatment, then later on after completing the second treatment. But in some cases it is not at all possible. For example, in the same topic we are teaching using 2 teaching method. Maybe the child may get some experience due to the first treatment that will affect the second treatment. So we cannot exactly measure the effect of each treatment separately. These are different methods of control. Now let us see which are the three different methods commonly used to control the situational variable. Only how we can control the situational variable. Method of holding the situational variable constant, then method of randomization, and systematically manipulate the situational variables. In this method, the researcher treats all the available subject alike. What is the difference there? In the exposure to the independent variable may vary. There, researcher is manipulating the independent variable. Example, in a reading experiment, the researcher may take equal number of subjects in two groups, teach them by the same teacher, use the same instruction, and then same test. The group may be taught in the same classroom at the same time of the day and in the same environmental condition. So all the extraneous variables are same. The teacher, the learning condition, the classroom, everything is same here. But the reading experiment, maybe he wanted to check a special method, the effect of a special method. That method he may change. All other variables will be constant. The next method is method of randomization. If the situational conditions cannot be treated alike, the researcher try to balance them by randomization. If same teacher cannot teach both the groups, researcher use different teachers but allow them to teach each group randomly and keep all other conditions alike as much as possible. Next method is systematic manipulation of the situational variable. Here, in some educational experiment, there is a progressive effect like practice and fatigue. We are doing the same experiment repeatedly. There is an effect of practice and an effect of fatigue also. This can be controlled by controlling the order in which experimental conditions are presented through a counterbalancing. Half the subject may receive an AB order and then other half may get BA order. Maybe we can change the order of the experimental procedure. Next is applying statistical control. We are using usually two methods for statistical control, that is analysis of covariance and partial correlation. The technique of analysis of covariance is used to control the variation within a group. The second statistical method is method of partial correlation. In order to see that, let us see an example. A researcher wants to study the effect of previous teaching experience on teaching competency of the teachers. You know that teaching competency is depend on many factors, not only the teaching experience. Here, the researcher conducted a survey before starting his experiment and he found out that teachers' attitude also affect the teaching competency. In such circumstances, the true relationship between the teaching competency and teaching experience cannot be found out without partialing out the effect of attitude towards teaching. So this can be accomplished using partial correlation. Here we can see the correlation only partially. These are the different methods a researcher is using in order to control the extraneous or intervening variable in the case of experimental research study.